Hello, and welcome to a video presentation on polygons. Here's what you'll learn. How to identify and name polygons. First of all, what is a polygon? A polygon must meet these three requirements. First of all, it has to be a plane figure. That means it's two-dimensional, and it has to have three or more line segments. Those are sides with no curves. Secondly, it has to be a closed figure. There have to be no openings around the sides, and all the sides meet at one point. Finally, there have to be no line segments that cross. Each vertex can only connect two sides. The points where the sides meet are called vertices. That's the plural of vertex, or one point. Now, let's take a look at some examples. Determine if the figure is a polygon or not, and if not, explain why it isn't. Remember, we have three requirements we have to meet. The first is, there have to be three or more line segments with no curves. This figure meets that requirement. Secondly, it has to be a closed figure with no openings around the sides. This figure meets that requirement. Finally, there have to be no line segments that cross. This figure also meets that requirement. So this figure is a polygon. Take a look at this figure. Is it a polygon? Requirement number 1 says there have to be three or more line segments with no curves. We meet that requirement. Secondly, it has to be a closed figure with no openings around the sides. We meet that requirement. Thirdly, there have to be no line segments that cross. We fail that requirement. There is an area where it looks like line segments cross. So this figure is not a polygon because the line segments cross. How about this figure? Is it a polygon? Requirement number 1 says we have to have three or more line segments with no curves. Now we passed that requirement. Requirement number 2, is it a closed figure with no openings around the sides? We fail that requirement. We have an area with an opening. So this figure is not a polygon because it's not a closed figure. How about this figure? Is it a polygon? Requirement number 1 says it has to have three or more line segments with no curves. Well, right off the bat, we fail that test because we have an area with a curved part of the figure. So this figure is not a polygon because one part is not a line segment. The number of angles in a polygon equals its number of sides. Polygons are named by the number of sides they have. A polygon with n sides is an n-gon. So what we're saying is a 16-sided figure is a 16-gon. A 22-sided figure is a 22-gon, and so forth. Some polygons have special names. Here are some of the more popular ones. This particular figure has three sides. We call it a triangle. This figure has four sides. It's a quadrilateral. Five-sided figures are called pentagons. Six-sided figures are called hexagons. Seven-sided figures are called heptagons. Eight-sided figures are called octagons. Nine-sided figures are called nonagons. And 10-sided figures are called decagons. Now name this polygon. Well, what we have to do is count the number of sides to figure out its name. This particular figure has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sides. A seven-sided figure is a seven-gon, but that's more commonly known as a heptagon. What's the name of this figure? Again, let's count the number of sides. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. A 12-sided figure is a 12-gon, but it also has a special name. We didn't talk about it earlier, but it's called a dodecagon. Finally, let's talk about something called regular polygons. Regular polygons are polygons whose sides are all the same length and whose interior angle measures are all the same as well. The figure on the left is just a pentagon. It's a five-sided figure with various side lengths and various angle measures. The figure on the right is a regular pentagon because it has congruent side lengths. All the sides are exactly the same length. And it has congruent angle measures. All of the angle measures in this particular pentagon are 108 degrees. So let's look at some examples now of naming the polygon and telling whether it's regular or not. If it's not regular, explain why it isn't. The sides in this particular figure are congruent. They're all 18 millimeters. But even though we don't have angle measures, it's easy to see that all of the angles are not going to be congruent. One pair of angles is acute, and the other pair is obtuse. So that means this quadrilateral is not regular. Now name this polygon and tell whether it's a regular polygon. Again, if it's not regular, explain why not. The sides are all congruent at 4 feet. The angles are all congruent at 60 degrees. So that means this is a regular triangle. Congratulations! You've learned how to identify and name polygons.